Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice, brought to you this week by ACRL and Choice. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director here at Choice, and this week I'm joined once again by Robert Dugan, the Dean of Libraries at the University of West Florida. Robert, who also goes by Dugan, and I will be talking about his recent book, Financial Management in Academic Libraries, Data-Driven Planning and Budgeting, which he co-authored along with Peter Hernan, Professor Emeritus at Simmons College, and the book is published by ACRL. The book is a terrific introduction and overview of financial management specific to academic libraries. Dugan and Peter cover budget planning, different kinds of budgets, reports, and financial leadership, among many other topics. In this final episode of our four-part series, Dugan and I talk about how to measure results and use them to prove your library's value to the public in the institution. Okay, so we're going to move into talking about actually measuring results and sort of ephemeral idea of proving value of a library. And Dugan, you note that I want to talk about a little bit about the differences actually between the words evaluation and assessment, which I guess sometimes are used interchangeably, but indeed have very different meanings in the context of library finance. Can you explain their meanings and differences a little bit?
I will certainly try. These words are used interchangeably, not only in libraries but throughout higher education. And most people talk about assessment, and what they're really talking about is evaluation. So let me put this in the context. So evaluation measures if a program, a service, or a system did what it was designed to do. That's what it does, and it helps us from a financial point of view understand if a planned objective was met. If assessment, on the other hand, looks at changes in library users from their contact with the library program. Our services or resources, however you want to look at that. Assessment includes statements about what library users will be able to know, think, or be able to do with contact from the library. Two very separate things. Let me give you examples of it from financial management. So in evaluation is quantitative, and it's best used for inputs, throughputs, and outputs, which are all things that are basically measurable. So we can say something like, the library will strengthen the collection in biomedical sciences for undergraduates. Period. That's what we're going to do. Well, we can look at the data. Once we've done that, and we can look at the number of resources acquired and their related cost, and to determine whether or not the objective was met. That's evaluation. We're just looking at it and going, did we do what we say we're going to do, and how did we do it? That's basically it. Right. However, assessment is an indirect qualitative measure, usefulness and value. So what we look at is looking at those same biomedical titles. Did it improve the collection? And the way we can look at improvement is we can look at a collection conspectus tool. There are a couple of those out, book analysis, that type of thing. Or we can listen to the faculty feedback. The department may say, yeah, you guys did great. They're not looking at the number of books. They're looking at the strength of the collection. So that's the difference between evaluation and assessment from a financial management point of view.
Okay, excellent. And then I guess along similar lines, we can talk a little bit about expenditure versus cost. And I really like that you have a little example of using the process of buying a monograph. And to me, that was sort of an eye-opening illustration to talk about the difference between what an expenditure is and what a cost is. And I'm wondering if you could sort of review that for us.
What happens is it's the way we use our terms, and business wouldn't, if you're in the business sector, they would talk about this a little bit differently, and I talk about it from a business perspective. So, I'll walk us through this type of thing. But what we tend to do is we refer to things as cost when they're actually just expenditures. So what's an expenditure? It's just a simple transfer of money for something. So the price of a book is $50. That's an expenditure. But in libraries, we refer to that as a cost. The cost of the book is $50. No. Right. It's the price of the book that's $50. When you start talking about a book in a library, the cost is a summative process of several expenditures. So just think about we're going to get a book for the general collection. There is staff time to choose and order the book. Well, there's expenditures related to the staff to do that, and they're measurable. It took them an hour to do that, and they make $15 an hour, so we know what that is.
Right.
There are other expenditures realized when the ship book arrives. So we get it, we have to check the packing list and that type of thing. Then we have to inform the business office that the book has been received. So there's a couple of expenditures there. Then we need to catalog the book. And what I'm looking at is a staff time to do that. We have to prepare the book for shelving because we just can't throw them on there. And then we have to actually shelve the books. The other expenditures that are related to that is the bibliographic utility. OCLC is going to charge us to catalog the book. And then we use supplies when we're preparing the book for shelving. Mm-hmm. So the accumulation of all these separate expenditures is the cost of the book. That far exceeds the price of the book.
Right.
So when we just need to clean up our language a little bit here.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that if we don't clean up our language, does that have an impact on how we might even look at a budget or construct a budget? Would in other words, would somebody sort of miss that process or the cumulative effect of the expenditures put towards the process of purchasing a book?
Yes, because you're underestimating what it costs to get the book from the vendor to the shelf. Mm. So what they're not considering is the staff time, the supplies, the actual cataloging cost. And what it comes down to is that when we say we spent $50 for this book, actually you probably spent $130 for the book.
Right.
And so when we're conveying that to the institution, we should be conveying the full and known cost. Other than that, they think that anybody can do this. Mm-hmm. And they can't. So that's why if you and as you in the book, there are 11. I detail 11 steps out just to show what it takes to get a book in, and then the expenditures related to that. Well, we just need to be thinking in that manner, because if we say that, well, a book only really cost $50, it didn't. And that's just not realizing the actual value that we add to making that book available.
Library managers at every level need to understand budgets, how to plan a budget and implement it, report on it, and how to run a budget audit. Library managers also need to harness metrics in order to tell their library story and to advocate for financial support within their institutions. Sometimes letting the numbers tell the story is the best approach, and Robert E. Dugan and Peter Hernan's Financial Management in Academic Libraries provides library managers with tools for finding the best stories and the numbers to back them up. For 15% off the cover price, visit the ALA store. That's store.ala.org and use the promo code ACRL15FM. This was enlightening for me to read, in the sense of what are some of the ways financial metrics, which by themselves don't necessarily prove value, how can they be used, I guess, to inform a library's value to its community and the administration? And then as we discuss that, you talked a little bit about how the idea of valuing a library is receiving increasing attention, and I'm wondering why that tends to be.
So the reason why the valuation or the valuing of the library, the valuation of the library is increased is because administration wants to know, and I mean senior administration at university wants to know more about what the library is doing for the users.
Right.
So we just can't say we're circulating 1,000 books. We have to place the circulation in context. What are they borrowing? Well, in our case, they're borrowing a lot of equipment and they're borrowing textbooks. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that is a little bit different in terms of how we're approaching that. We land more graphing calculators in some fiscal years than we do, parts of the print collection. They want the calculators. I mean, what can we do? Right. And then they want to know, are there queues? Are people having to wait for things? Are we lending stuff are there things that they want that we're not loaning? Well, an example of that, we just bought 2 360-degree cameras. Because students are saying that they want to be able to do a 360-degree view without standing in place and stepping across, doing, pasting stuff together. We now have 2 cameras that can do that. It's something that they asked for. We did. Secondly, valuation is important because everybody has a financial perspective. We think in terms of money.
Right.
Students don't really care about the number of laptops we loaned, but they want to know that they can get their money's worth from the library. So what we've done is we've developed a formula, a proxy we call value of usage. And what we're looking at doing is trying to help people understand the library from their financial perspective. This is a riff on a calculation of the production of a commodity, which is a business formula. But basically, and it's very easy. The value of usage the formula that I'm using, value of usage is equal to the measured output of a service, in other words, your outputs, multiplied by the assigned cost per unit. So everybody has output in terms of this. This is where knowing what a cost per unit comes down to. How much does it actually cost to do a book? That type of thing. Right. So an example, just a simple example of this thing, real easy. The value of usage calculation for articles. So if we have 10,000 articles that were downloaded, that's the measured output. And the assigned price is $15 per article. That's what we know comes from the database usage cost. Then we know the value of usage is $150,000. It's that simple. Now, what you do is you take 10 or so of these services that you do, and you do that calculation from all of them, and then you compare it to the library's annual expenditure. Mm. This is basically an institutional return on investment. So what I'm saying is that this is the value of usage from the library, and let's say it comes up to, $50 million or something like that, and the library got $5 million. It's a 1 to 10 ratio.
Yeah. That's a good...
And it's just a proxy. It doesn't prove anything, but it's a way of putting the financial, the expenditures into a perspective that people understand. Pizza costs $15. Okay, same as an article. So, we can break this down. One of the things that we have done in terms of applying this is that we've done value of usage for the institution, but because everybody has a financial stake in this thing, one of the things I've done from a public relations point of view is to put this into a return on investment for students as well. Mm-hmm. So what we were hearing, students would come into the library and they go, I'm spending $18,000 to come to this university and I can't get anything. Okay, so the first thing we explained to them is that, well, of your $18,000, we get $375 of it.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The students were like shocked that that's what we get. They think of it in $18,000. No, we get $375. And then what we did was we put together a tool, a return on investment type of tool that says how can the student take advantage of the library. What can they do to take more value out of the library than they put in? So what we did is we took another set of the 10 most popular services, we costed them out, and we did it at a minimal level. So that what we look at is that if you download 12 articles, that's worth $120. If somebody only at the university level only downloads 12 articles a year, they're not writing, they're not researching, they're not doing anything. 12 articles is really nothing.
Right.
You can do that in 20 minutes or so. But we put that as that's worth $120 there. If you ask a reference question and you use 2 of our research guides, that's worth $40. Mm-hmm. Well, what we did is we took that at a minimal. We costed how much it costs to actually spend an hour in the library. And we just said if you spend just an hour in the library doing the whole academic year, this is what it would cost. And so what we did is we put together a spreadsheet for them that says if you use us in a minimal way, you will make out more than what you put in. Mm-hmm. A student return on investment. Yeah. And then we put up a calculator that lets them calculate their own personal return on investment.
That's a nice touch. I like that. So you mentioned public relations, and I did want to touch on that, before we conclude, and you made a clear case for it just now, actually. But I mean, describe where the library's public relations efforts, either within the institution, as you just explained, for students, or outside of it, and how that dovetails with financing. How these two activities inform and support each other.
They fit together really well, and that's because we look at it from a financial perspective, and so don't they. So everything that we try to do from an external point of view, from external to the library, is in money or in dollars or in cost, because everybody has a financial perspective. So what we explain to the institution is that you give us this amount of money, and what we've done with it is turn out a return on investment of around $6.72. And what we're looking at is the value of usage applied to the value usage formula applied to all these services. And then from the student point of view, we not only explain the services, but we also give them the opportunity to calculate their own value. Because some students will come in and go, I'm in here, 40 hours during the academic year. Well, yay, you made back more than everything you gave. Right. The other thing we try to do is to give some of the unique numbers that we know about, and this is my latest go-to number that I really love. So one of the things is that when students come into the library, or when students use our computers in the library, they have to log in. And the reason why they have to log in is so that we know that it's a student, and then they get access to all the subscription databases we have and that type of thing. Right. So last year, this past fiscal year, we looked at this in terms of the unique number of logins that we had versus the head count for the student head count for the university. 70% of students used the library.
Wow.
70% of students came into the library at some time during the last academic year and logged on at least once. Well, when you tell administration that, they get excited.
Yeah.
How many other places have 70% in terms of people using it? And the other thing to remember on that, and which I have reminded our provost about a couple of times, is that those are students who physically visit the library. We're not talking about the students who never come to the library because they're on a ship somewhere in the Navy in the Mediterranean. Mm-hmm. We don't even know about what they're up to. We don't have the data on that because the vendors can't parse that out for us yet. But think about the fact that of the entire population, 70% of them visited the library. I mean, that helps a lot with financial budgeting. You go and go, hey, look, we're the most used place on campus. Well,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you definitely want to be looking for the stories that you can tell with the metrics that you're able to pull out of the successful financial efforts that you're doing.
Right. I mean, there's the narrative part of things, but then there is the data part of things. Mm-hmm. And while the stories and the narrative are really important, students saying, we've got what we call student voices, in which we've got a couple of short videos of students saying how they use the library and why. There's also 70% of them have come into the building during the last academic year and logged on. So don't mess with us. I mean, we're important.
Okay, Dugan, well, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You just heard from Robert Dugan, co-author, along with Peter Hernan, of Financial Management in Academic Libraries, which is published by ACRL. This concludes the final episode of our 4-part series, brought to you by ACRL and Choice. You can search for and listen to all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find all of our episodes on choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. Be sure to leave us a rating and a review, because it helps others discover the Authority File podcast and lets us know how we're doing. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at @choice_reviews. That's all for this series. Thanks again for joining us.